Welcome, everybody. This is episode 4. We've made it 4 episodes in now of Wide Awake and Listening, and I'm personally incredibly excited to talk to our 2 guests today. Again, fortunate to know these people as well. They do amazing things in Indianapolis. Wanted to start off with you, Sarah. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and why you're here?
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Brandon, for having me. Sarah Hindi here. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator at Exodus Refugee Immigration. My role at Exodus is I oversee, recruit, coordinate, and train all of our volunteers, group volunteers, individual volunteers, as well as our interns. And I also support our advocacy efforts and manage our social media accounts and website. So make sure you follow us on Exodus on social media and check out our website after this. That is my shameless plug.
Good. And Cole, how about you?
Yeah, I'm Cole Varga. I'm the executive director at Exodus Refugee, which means I'm mostly in charge of the place, but I still have to do whatever Sara tells me. So
it's true.
As we all do. We're just living in this world. But really appreciate you having me on, and my thanks to Kit. Good to see her as always. Here's some tunes. So. Yeah, happy to be here and happy to talk about refugees and immigrants.
All right. Well, cool. Before we dive too deep into the topic at hand today, I wanted to warm us up a little bit. And so I have a couple warm-up questions for you. The first one is, if you were a TV character, what TV character would you be? And I'll let you go first, Cole.
Oh, boy. Let's see.
Or which one would you want to be? That's probably easier.
What I want to be.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I don't know. I've been watching a lot of stand-up comedy lately. I'm really looking up to some of those funny individuals. So maybe someone like Seinfeld. But I've also, because we've been stuck at home for 2 months, been watching a lot of garbage kids TV.
Yeah.
One show in particular is pretty funny. It's like Ryan's Mystery Date or something. I don't know if no one on this knows this, right? The dad on there is kind of my life goal. He's just like the goofiest guy ever, and I aspire to be him someday.
It's a good one. Sarah, how about you?
Someone whom I aspire to be would be Viola Davis in How to Get Away with Murder. Absolutely love that show. Love her role in it. Love her as a human being. But fun fact, a lot of my friends do compare me to David on Schitt's Creek. So that's the real character, I guess. But Viola Davis would have to be the character I strive to be.
Fair enough. I've been rewatching The X-Files. And so I think Mulder is who I think I would currently identify with, maybe. All right, so second warm-up question. What's an important truth to you that very few people agree with you on? And Sarah, you can go first this one.
Ooh. I don't know if that's a warm-up question or we're getting started into the conversation. I guess on a personal level, but tying it back to kind of immigration and refugees and how I got started in this work. So all 4 of my grandparents were Palestinian refugees, and they fled war in 1948 and went to Jordan, and just have traveled also to different parts of the world in search of a home. And so I would say my opinions on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict are not common opinions, and not an opinion that most people would agree with or even know.
Okay, that's a good one. Yeah. How about you, Cole?
Well, I guess I can't say the Palestinian conflict, huh? I along the same lines, I think we're, of course, very globally minded here at Exodus in general. And I would say I have always thought of myself as a global citizen, and I kind of wish more people would. We wouldn't get into these spats over nationalism or thinking about othering people, and we would just all be citizens of the world together. So I wish more people shared that opinion with me, actually.
Yeah, those are really good ones. So thank you guys so much. So the topic at hand today is the present and the future of immigration. And I thought that you two would obviously be able to talk on that very well. And it's something that I think some corners it gets tossed around, but I don't think it actually gets talked about that much, especially here locally in Indiana. And so I'm excited to hear about some of the current things and struggles that are happening with immigration, but additionally, some of the maybe bright spots or future that you see happening in the long term. And so I wanted to start off, Cole, if you would just tell us a little bit about Exodus and what you guys have been doing for the last few years and what you're doing now.
Yeah, happy to. So Exodus Refugee Immigration has been around since 1981. We are primarily, historically, a refugee resettlement agency, but we serve some other groups as well. Those that I would kind of qualify under the umbrella of immigrants of humanitarian concern. So those would be refugees, of course, asylees, which are essentially refugees just depending on how they're entering the country. Certified victims of human trafficking, which are foreign-born victims of human trafficking, as well as pre-certified, so people before they're granted that certification from the US. Certain Cuban and Haitian entrants, special immigrant visa holders, which are the Iraqis and Afghans who, for example, worked alongside US forces during those two wars and then were targeted because of that, and they have a special visa to come live here safely afterwards. And more recently, we've started piloting some work with asylum seekers. So those individuals that are not yet to asylum status, but are working towards that and are encountering all of the numerous problems that you face in current America. So that includes people coming up through the border, people coming through many different types of entry into the US, but are seeking ultimately asylum and safety here in the US. So broadly, we'll kind of stay in our lane on this rather than immigration as a whole, just mostly those groups. But anyway, how Exodus plays a role is we're the local organization here on the ground that's helping welcome all of these individuals and help provide things like case management, English classes, employment services, so job readiness and training and online applications and setting up emails and taking them to their job interviews and interpreting for them. We have mental health services that are free home-based services for our clients, women's program to help overcome some of the unique barriers that women would face that are part of these vulnerable populations. A youth program as well that helps kids get connected to the, adjusting to the shock that it can be entering the public school system in the US after having lived in a camp, for example. And many other services around there, some legal services as well. So that's mostly, we're doing a lot here and trying to ramp people up from stepping off the plane to becoming self-sufficient as quickly as possible.
Yeah, how many people have you, even in just your tenure there, you can go, if you know the number, since 81, have helped enter the country and become, more acclimated here?
Yeah, in terms of new refugee arrivals, I've been around almost 11 years at Exodus now, actually. I'm an old timer. But probably, I think 7,000 or 8,000 new refugees during that time. And then additionally, I don't know the number off the top of my head, but an additional several hundred asylees, SIVs, human trafficking during that time as well.
Yeah, so as I was doing research for our talk today, I was looking up numbers in general, and you had some numbers on your website that in 2019 you had helped 18,000, was that right?
I think 1,142, but who's counting?
Okay, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Oh, no, sorry. I'm looking at the nationwide stats of 18,000. And since basically Trump has came in, he's decimated that program. He's changed policies all around on how you enter and made it generally almost impossible or much tougher at the very least to enter the country. Can you kind of explain what some of those policy changes were and how maybe things weren't amazing like during Obama. It wasn't like it was perfect before, and it's just gotten worse. So can you talk about a little bit of those changes that have happened?
Sure. I can start. Sarah, jump in if I say something. So what's interesting about the refugee program is that it's a federal program, and basically refugees are invited into the country. So each year, the president actually gets to decide, fortunately or unfortunately, that number. It's called the Presidential Determination Number. So since the Refugee Act of 1980, the average number of refugees that have been set at the goal each year has been around 95,000 on average. So the 18,000 number that you mentioned, that's the goal for this year. So significantly less than where it has been historically. I think in the first year, Carter set it at 200 and some thousand, 210,000 roughly. And that was at a time when there was only 8 million refugees globally. And right now we're at a time when there's 26 million refugees globally, and we're bringing in a minimal amount of refugees, and we likely won't even meet that goal this year. So during Obama, it was a little bit higher. He was actually increasing it on his way out. He had set it at 110,000. And then when you had the change in president, it immediately got cut in half. And has since gotten cut in half basically every year since. So it hasn't been a great time for the program. And I'd say even before that, of course, as you remember, and our friend Kit surely remembers, we had some interesting times with dealing with Governor Pence and his attempt to try and block Syrian refugees from coming. And the ACLU, our heroes over there, were able to step in and help us out and make sure that everyone's welcome in Indiana. So the past 5 years have been quite interesting. Actually, the day that we announced, or the day that Pence announced that he was going to block Syrian refugees was the day that Exodus announced I was going to take over as director. So it's been a super fun time to get into the refugee resettlement game.
Great timing.
Yeah. Sarah, did I miss anything?
Yeah, Sarah, how has that cut, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your funding is tied to the amount of refugees that you help, right? And so how has this cut affected you in your job and your career, but also personally, as people who just want to help other people? How has it affected you?
Yeah, so the federal program funds every newly arrived refugee. So programs like our youth program, women's program, and mental health program are all privately funded. But specifically for the federal program, it cut the number of refugees that we welcomed to Indianapolis and that we welcomed at Exodus, but also that we welcomed nationally. And two, I mean, in the last few years, we've had two or three different rounds of staff cuts just due to different budgeting and funding issues. And it's also changed a little bit of the populations that we've served. To kind of put it into context, nationally, in fiscal year 2016, the Obama administration welcomed over 12,000 Syrian refugees. In fiscal year 2017, right when President Trump took over, that number declined by half. And so we only welcomed a little bit over 6,000 refugees in the United States. But in fiscal year 2018, we only welcomed 62 Syrian refugees. So that number has drastically changed. And this is very similar to other populations, people from Iraq, people from Somalia, people from Sudan, all the folks that were listed on the Muslim travel ban. And so those specific populations were drastically declined in terms of resettlement, although they were and continue to be some of the most vulnerable around the world and continue to need resettlement.
Gotcha. Yeah. And to that point, if let's say 2020, we have an election, obviously, we have a change in administration, fingers crossed. And what would be the first action or the first thing that you would want this new administration to take? I mean, we probably will keep control of the House, and we have a very small chance, but a chance at flipping the Senate as Democrats, and then flipping the presidential, obviously, race as well. And so what would that action be, or what would be the first thing to help get this ball rolling or reverse some of these policies that have negatively impacted these people, first off, but even organizations like yourself?
I think first would be, so every year the president determines, along with Congress, how many refugees the United States is going to admit. And so I think the first opportunity or the first thing to do would be to increase the presidential determination number from this year's 18,000 to at least 95,000, so that we're able to welcome a lot of refugees in the next few years. And I would also focus a lot about the travel ban and the Muslim ban, and just find a way to get rid of it, and so that we're not blocking certain people from entering the country.
Yeah.
I can add on to that. So Sarah, what you were mentioning is already being bounced around on Capitol Hill. So there's something called the Grace Act in both, there's a House and Senate version. So it'd be fantastic to get that signed to enshrine at least a threshold number of refugees. So the US could say we were doing our job in terms of humanitarian support of the refugee population. So that would definitely be number one. But the other thing that's sort of under the radar is just all of the damage that's been done to the infrastructure of the refugee program. So you talked about funding, we talked about less arrivals, but all of the offices, not just Exodus, but in the Obama administration, there was roughly 300 agencies like us spread out across the US in different cities. Now there's under 200, so we've lost over 100 agencies just in the past 3 years. And then not to mention what's going on overseas. So all the vetting, all the procedures, all the circuit rides that need to happen to go do the interviews and the security checks in the refugee camps abroad, that staff's been cut or is not even being sent out anymore. So there's a lot of work to undo, not just the bad policy, but the lack of policy, right? That's happened the past few years.
Yeah. So with, we're all dealing with a pandemic, obviously, in general. How has that impacted the immigrant or refugee community specifically? Sharing this, and whichever one of you wants to answer.
Yeah, I can start. So in talking about the refugee community, all travel's been paused, which of course is probably a good thing. It's not like we want anyone jumping on planes right now during this time until it gets a little bit more stabilized. So that's good. On the other hand, I've had a concern since the beginning of what happens when the virus hits the camps. So these are places where sometimes 1 million people are just living on top of each other. And I actually just saw the BBC headline yesterday that the Rohingya camp in Bangladesh actually had its first couple confirmed cases. So that is really, really concerning because it could potentially decimate a population, right, that's already living in unhealthy conditions. And even a few weeks ago, I think one of the Palestinian camps in Lebanon had a couple of positive cases. So we're talking about people that have already been through hell that are now facing a challenge again on top of them. That's probably the medical teams in these camps are not going to be able to handle. So a couple concerns there for sure.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have anything?
I was going to talk about more the impact that it has locally on our clients that we've welcomed. So we've had to, so our physical office has been closed for several weeks now, and we're uncertain when we'll be able to open it back up to the public. And so we've had to adjust all of our services to remote services. So WhatsApp video, phone calls, emails, and just having to adjust that, which is very different for us because our office is always open to our clients, and the work that we do is very hands-on, is in person. So it's been a very different vibe, I would say. But our staff and our volunteers have handled it so well. Have just done such a fantastic job providing remote services like mental health counseling over WhatsApp video, English classes, continuing cultural orientation classes, helping over 60 clients who have recently lost their jobs, and so they're also a part of the unemployment numbers in the state and the country, and so helping them file for unemployment if they're eligible, and just really helping families during this time, whether that's buying them groceries, paying their rent, paying their utilities, and supporting them as much as possible.
Yeah. And to that locally, what does our local immigrant community look like? Like, where are they coming from? Where, like, what type of jobs do they get when they come here? How are they impacting our community as a whole?
So Indianapolis has one of the largest Burmese population in the United States, which is pretty cool. Also, people known from Myanmar, and so there's a lot of ethnic groups within that country, but we have a large Karen and Chin populations located on the south side, Greenwood area, and also the north side of Indianapolis. I think there's over 16,000 people from Burma, Myanmar living in Indianapolis itself. There's also a large population in Fort Wayne as well. And then the second largest population that we've served at Exodus are individuals from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And then the third largest population that we resettled a few years ago, and that they were supposed to be the largest growing as well, was our Syrian friends. In terms of where they work, they are essential workers right now. So they are all over the city. They work in Amazon warehouses, FedEx, post office. They also work in restaurants, which is where some of our clients have lost their jobs in that industry. They work in hotels. So they're really all over the city, just have always served our community, but even continuing to do so locally and during this pandemic.
Yeah, and I know I've talked to you about this before, Cole. What are some of the economic benefits that a community has that has a strong immigrant population in it?
Yeah, so there's been several studies done about this, and some of them buried because the administration didn't like the results, but it turns out that immigrants and refugees actually are a net contributor to the economy by billions of dollars. Which is unsurprising, of course, to us because we know how hardworking they are, how innovative, how they're business owners. They'll start up a business very quickly. They'll hire other immigrants. You have people that we like to point to, like the owner operator of Chobani Yogurt, of course, coming from this story. So I think the impact is on every level. We have restaurant owners, we have tailors, we have frontline healthcare workers that Sarah alluded to. They're all over our city, whether we know it or not, and they're helping make this community more vibrant and helping pay taxes and just build the city and make sure we're healthy.
Yeah, totally. So I'm going to switch to some of the questions we got. We got a ton of questions from the guests, which is amazing always. And so I want to make sure that we have time to answer some of these. Also, for the people watching, there is a Q&A function down there and a chat either way. If you have something that pops in your head, please put it in there and we'll try to get it answered for you. We had some variation of what is the best way to help the immigrant population, or what is the best way to help Exodus directly in multiple forms. So if you guys want to talk about that, whichever one wants to go.
Sure, yeah. So I would say right now the best way to help Exodus would be to donate. And just because, we do have our spring campaign going on, and we are continuing to serve families during this difficult time for all of us. And we understand donating is just not something that everyone can do, but if you have generous friends or family members in the community and they're looking for a good cause to support, we hope that you could send them our way. Another thing that you could do is to advocate. So call your elected officials. Don't wait till the next election or till the next round, till another administration hopefully comes in. Do it now. Let them know that you still support refugees and immigrants even during this time. And then the third thing that you can do is purchase a wonderful Refugees Welcome t-shirt as worn today by Cole Varga. So you can be as cool as he is and have that t-shirt in your closet. And it's not to be biased, but it's a true comment that I've heard from everyone. It's very comfortable.
It is.
And then I think
I've been wearing this majority of the time we've been in quarantine. So I have multiple versions of this.
2 months, he hasn't taken it off.
I've washed it, don't worry.
That's really been our uniform for a few months. And the last thing that everyone can play a role. So in reality is that we have, a racist, unwelcoming administration, but we can change that narrative in our communities, and we can change that narrative in our neighborhoods and in our state by just being welcoming to others and just understanding people. And we seem to always, whether it's the media or this administration, we seem to always have an idea or a specific perception of what an American looks like, what language they speak, what holidays they celebrate. I mean, when I go out with my mother or my family members in public and we speak Arabic, even when we don't speak Arabic, we've heard it all. We've heard all the nasty comments all around central Indiana when we're out and about. from This Is America, We Speak English, or to my favorite one, This Is America, We Speak American. I don't know what that means. Or like, This Is America, We Celebrate Christmas, different things like that, that are just ignorant and unwelcoming comments. And so I really urge people to just change that narrative and change that perspective that an American looks a certain way or dresses a certain way, because regardless of where we're from, or how long that we've been here in this country and in this city, we belong here, and this is our home too. And so just seeing everyone as from Indianapolis, from Indiana, or just from the United States as a whole.
Right. And to that, another one of the questions was, is there an easy way to find a list of immigrant-owned businesses that I can support?
So during this time, in terms of restaurant owners, I would say the marketplace, the international marketplace is a great place to start. All immigrant-owned restaurants, very delicious. If you've never had Ethiopian Eritrean food, check it out. Also, if you've never tried Burmese food, Kimu in Greenwood, KIMU, really good restaurant, and Chim Brothers, also another good restaurant. So definitely support and try to eat different foods from different places during this time.
Yeah. And so one of the other questions, and you kind of hinted at it, but was talking about more local or state office holders or elected officials and how we can advocate to them. We've talked a lot about federally what's going on, but what is the importance of our local elected officials on this topic? And then additionally, how can we advocate to them that to support immigration policies?
So I would definitely say, as we are getting ready to vote for our future elected officials, don't just vote, be an informed voter, really understand the policies that they are going to pass or that they would like to pass that are inclusive and welcoming for all, and that really protect and look out for the best of everyone in the community rather than hurt some of our community members and neighbors. And definitely voice your opinions when you are out and about, or a candidate knocks on your door. Let them know that you support refugees and that you support immigrants and that you want to continue to make Indiana an inclusive place for all.
Yeah, cool.
It's mostly been an untouchable topic since the Pence Syrian policy. We just recently have started getting some people to answer our phone calls and actually be interested in refugee resettlement and talking about asylees and human trafficking victims. So I think part of that is on you all. It's on us to make sure that people know in our state house that refugees are here, that they are in Fort Wayne, that they are in other parts of the state. Even in Logansport, I actually helped place some people back in the day, many years ago, at the plant that's now had some issues in Logansport. So refugees may come here, but they might move around our state and around our economy. So we have to kind of watch every part of Indiana and make sure that elected officials know who their constituents are and what their interests are. And I'll further say, there's certain things we can do to just make policies for refugees and other immigrant groups better in Indiana. So things like even making in-state tuition a thing for immigrants from day one when they enter the state, making sure things are translated. So working with companies like Luna or LTC to make sure that companies have good signage, that they have access to interpretation and translation would make this a much more welcoming city and state.
So we just got a question. Was there a bill that did or did not pass during this past legislative session that you feel would have directly impacted the refugee population?
Oh, it seems like a million years ago.
I know. Or has there been bills in the past few years that you thought, if passed, would have really helped this population of people?
Of course, we were looking at the bias crimes bill just for obvious reasons, to make sure that Indiana was a more welcoming state and visibly more welcoming to everyone.
Right.
So we have some mixed emotions about how that all turned out. We definitely have a wish list, but unfortunately not a whole lot of immigrant related legislation has been coming through the State House.
Well, let's talk about that. Like, what is on that wish list of bills that locally or at a state level, at least, we could pass that would really help bias crimes? Obviously, you just spoke of.
Yeah.
I'm assuming even some of the like pregnancy accommodation bills and things of that nature would help just everybody, but including this population. Are there other things?
Yeah, I mean, there's things that can be fixed. Like the BMV's been making some improvements lately, but there's definitely been some issues there over the year, and they've, like I said, been making a few steps in the right direction. I mentioned language access. You wouldn't believe how much of an issue that has been, especially during the COVID crisis right now. But trying to get clients to be able to call and just access their benefits, access unemployment if they've been laid off. So it's been really shown how critical it is for our work to be going on and continue during this time to make sure that people that don't speak English as a first language have an advocate, have someone that can yell at the unemployment office, have someone that can talk to Social Security and try to push through applications. But just, I guess, making sure that there's equality for whatever population you have, whatever language you speak, whatever ethnicity you are.
Yeah. Sarah, when you run for office, what are you going to do?
I don't know what you're talking about. I have not thought about running for office, so I really haven't thought much further into this.
Not what I heard, but all right.
Whatever you hear on Twitter isn't always true.
That's very true, actually.
There's barely anybody in the 5th district. You should just jump right in.
Yeah. I know, there's like 20 people, so I might as well be the 21st.
Right. Sarah 2020, it's right there. The chat, I got it. So speaking of the future now, what do you think, what is your positive view, at least? So we'll stay away from the cynical view, but what is your positive view of the future of immigration going forward, the future of the refugee population and your work?
Well, I'm happy to jump in first. So I guess in the least cynical view, there's really nowhere to go but up at this point. There's been so many cuts to refugees. There's been so much done to affect negatively asylum seekers, as we've been watching what's been going on our southern border. Even during the COVID crisis, there's been tens of thousands of people that have been deported. Some of them even testing positive for the virus and being sent back to vulnerable countries and communities. So I think there's a lot of healing that'll have to happen, and a lot of bridging with some of our partner nations across the globe, like Turkey, who's got 3 or 4 million refugees within its borders. A NATO ally of ours who we've traditionally worked with to help the refugee population. So there's going to be a lot of mending that needs to happen, but I think that's doable with a president who is more open, a president who reads, a president who's willing to work with allies to make the world a better place.
Yeah, Sarah.
I think in terms of our communities, I hope someday we all understand that refugees and immigrants aren't just, some aliens that came to our country just yesterday or are going to come to our country, understanding that they're already here and really understanding the demographics of each neighborhood and each community so that people aren't surprised when they see a Muslim walking in the neighborhood or, find out that Indianapolis has a large Burmese population, just so that we can be past beyond discussions and debates about should we be a welcoming nation or not, which is just such a silly debate for America. That's always been a country for the most vulnerable, the persecuted, and just the land of opportunity. And so it's really sad that we are now kind of turning into that direction of asking ourselves that rather than just being a welcoming nation and saying like, okay, how many refugees are we going to welcome this year? How many green cards are we going to issue? Just all of that.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing in real quick, and probably both of you have heard me say this before, but we've been through this with other groups before, with Italians, with Irish, and how poorly they were treated a century ago, and now there's a Fazoli's every 2.1 miles in the U.S., and we have a national holiday to drink green beer and celebrate the Irish. So I think there's only a positive incline in how we will be celebrating these groups in the future. Hopefully we're celebrating Syrians in a few years, and we're celebrating the Burmese community in a few years, like we celebrate other ethnicities that have come in the past.
Yeah.
What are some of those intentional actions that we can do as allies or advocates that can like kind of maybe help along our friends or family members that are not as understanding or just don't have the experiences that we may have already? What are some of those actions that we can take?
I think I would say one, just talking about the benefit of welcoming refugees, and it depends on who you're talking to. So usually I always start with the humanitarian purpose, but a lot of people are interested in the economics purpose. And so just talking about how much refugees and immigrants contribute to our communities and our society. And I find that a lot of people that have just fear refugees or fear immigrants in general are just misinformed folks. So there are folks that have created their opinion based off of stereotypes or false information rather than actual facts. So telling people things like refugees and immigrants don't come here to just stay on public benefits. They're employed all over our city and they pay our taxes. And if you know anything about the welfare system, you know, one, it does not provide food for your family on the table. And two, they're always asking for your paychecks and every copy of your paychecks and all of that, just so month by month, those benefits decline. And so you can't be on there forever. And so just helping with the misinformation that's going on, because I think, unfortunately, depending on which news channel you tune into, or your family members, your friends, they just have a lot of misinformation about that.
Yeah.
I'd say also just to share some stories. So we have many that Sara has written actually on our website, but just understanding the path that some of our clients have taken, some of our refugees, asylees, SIVs, and how hard it was to come here, how often it's not even a choice, it's just to survive. They've had to flee their home, right, and come to the US, and this is an opportunity that has come to them. So I think just once you put a face on it, once you put a name with the stories of immigrants and refugees, it becomes more familiar, and it becomes something that you can digest a little bit more, rather than talking about, we started talking about the numbers, which are important, of course, in policy decisions, but 95,000 or 18,000, sometimes that just gets garbled up. But when you talk about the single mom who worked 3 jobs when she got here to help pay for rent and food for her kids, and the young refugees that are, graduating high school, top of their class, and going on to college to become doctors and nurses. So those are the types of things, the successes that we've been lucky enough to see in this job. And I hope some of you will take a look at some of the stories we've been able to share, and even seek out refugees on your own to talk to them and learn their stories.
Yeah. Is there anything I haven't asked you guys that you wanted me to ask or that you wanted to talk about?
Let me check my notes.
Check those notes. How's the little one, Cole? I'll ask about the family.
Yeah, I've got 2. So one's in kindergarten, which has been super fun to figure out.
Yeah. How's your new life as a teacher?
It's not good. It's been tough. And then I've got a daughter who's about to turn 1 year old in a couple of weeks. So that's been, it's been great to be home. I'm working in my dining room table. My wife's up in my son's bedroom all day. And then we get to see the kids more. So my daughter started walking a couple months ago, like right when we went into lockdown. So we got to see, spend some more time with her. It's been great, actually.
Awesome. Yeah. Sarah, was there anything I missed?
I guess my last point that I would end on is just shout out to everyone in the community, shout out to everyone in the city. We wouldn't be able to do this work. Refugee resettlement is not just an agency work, it's a community as a whole work. And so we're really grateful for all of our volunteers, all of our faith partners, all of our donors, all of our supporters, and anyone who sends kind messages in our contact us forms, or just kind messages when they make a donation or drop off winter coats and winter gear. We're really grateful for everyone in the city who has stepped up and have become the voice of welcome, even under administration that is not so welcoming.
Yeah, and one thing I would say too to add on is when it's safe to, I would implore everybody to go to their offices, say hi, and see the work that they're doing in person. It's truly amazing, and it's an eye-opening experience. So so I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming on the show. This was a great episode. Do you want to shout out your social media or anything?
Yes, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Exodus Refugee Immigration.
Mm-hmm. I believe somebody put your Tiffany Hansen put your donate in the chat also.
Thank you, Tiffany. You want. Shout out to our friends at Luna.
All right.
Cool having us, Brandon. Thanks so much. Great to see you again.
Yeah, well, I know, right? Maybe we'll see each other in person sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. Bye, guys. Have a good day.